Welcome. My name is Dan Swindell. I'll be your host on this presentation of the Kyani business opportunity. The first thing I'd like to do is say thank you for your time. I know that you could have been somewhere else doing something else, and you're taking the time to invest with us. We take very seriously and hope to make this worth your while. That Kyani is a true partnership. It is a partnership of the home office, the corporate people, and us in the field that are representing the products to the general population. And as you start learning a little bit more about Kyani, you'll learn that Kyani is really truly about two things. It's about helping people with their health and with their finance. And let's talk first about their health and where did the word Kyani come from? Who are we as a company? What does Kyani mean? Kyani is not a made-up word. It literally is a word from the language of the Tlingit Eskimo tribe. And you'll find that that word means strong medicine when literally translated. And to go back in history a little bit before the company was even formed, a couple of our owners ran into some anthropologists in Alaska that were studying the Tlingit people of Alaska. And they learned that those people that were still eating the indigenous diet of their ancestors did not have heart disease, did not have cancer, did not have diabetes. It just didn't have it. And even more, there were no words in their language for those conditions. Getting eaten by a polar bear, lots of words. Starving to death, lots of words. Freezing to death, lots of words. Words that would describe heart disease, cancer, diabetes were not existent in their language. With that information in hand, the company decided they were going to bring super powerful products from Alaska and combine them with other exotic foods and botanicals from around the world and really truly make unique proprietary products to enhance the quality of human health. And when you do that, you create a business opportunity. So as you start looking at Kyani, think of it in two ways. One, we have an opportunity to help people with their health, and two, we get to help people with their finance. Now as you go in and you say, okay, well, who were the people that actually ran into this person that was studying the Tlingit tribe? And that would be the Powells, Dick and Gail. While they were visiting in Alaska, they ran into this anthropologist and heard the story. And they took that information to our other owners. But before we get into them, I want to back up and help you understand this relationship that Kyani has with the Tlingit tribe. The Tlingits live in a particular geographic region where this super fruit that we'll be talking about, the wild Alaskan blueberry, is very, very prevalent in a wild state. And it's not in a state that you could really bring in commercial harvesters to come access this because it's in the wild tundra. It's very difficult to get to. So we have a very unique and supportive role of the Tlingits. We've arranged multiple contracts with the various tribes there that live on this ground over this fairly diverse large area, and we pay them a couple of times a year, even when they're not harvesting or having anything to do with the crop, just so that we can support them. The Powells came down and met with the Hansen family and the Taylor family, and they shared this story about the Tlingits and the wild Alaskan blueberry, and then we'll be introduced here to the wild Alaskan sockeye salmon here in a moment. But the Hansens and the Taylors were just captivated by the story by the Powells, and they said, you know what? Let's form a company. And it's interesting because the Hansens and the Taylors, they didn't need another company. They were already extremely wealthy and doing well in excess of $1 billion a year in sales in their existing industries. Industries such as oil and gas and distribution and mini markets and gas stations and tank farms and rolling stock. They were also involved in real estate, involved in hotels and in agriculture and ranching. So they really truly didn't need to start another company, but they chose to. They were committed to this idea of bringing these superfoods to the world and really enriching the quality of human life. Now when you build a checklist and you start looking at a company and saying, you know, these are all the different bona fides that need to be in place in order for a company to have long-term survivability and long-term viability. And after you get past ownership, you really need to go to management. And Kyani was very wise. The owners knew that they needed to bring in industry professionals, and they did that. They did a very broad search, and they found Michael Brashears. Michael is an interesting individual in that he is not only just an industry person, He's someone who has taken companies from a clean sheet of paper up to hundreds of millions in annual sales. He's also sat on the Direct Selling Association's board of directors, overseeing all of the companies. So we're very, very privileged to have Michael at the helm of our ship. We also have Stephen Hatch, our Senior Vice President of Marketing, and Stephen is just plain an incredibly talented individual, and if you ever get a chance to see him on stage, he's hilarious. The guy is just funny as can be. Also have Kyani Thompson, and Kyani is an individual that I just think has no comparable position in any company in the world. Kyani was in effect the master distributor of one of our competing companies that was doing a couple $2 billion in annual sales, an enormous behemoth company. And Kyani, as the top distributor in that company in the world, left that company and went out and banged around a little bit. And then we approached him, and he chose to actually become a corporate person, even though he had this tremendous field positions, experience, and knowledge. To have somebody like Kyani Thompson at the head of our corporate division in sales is a blessing beyond imagination. And then we have Scott Seedall. And Scott, beyond the fact he is just a brilliant, brilliant attorney, he's a brilliant man. And he has an understanding of international markets and international law and what it takes to get products registered in countries that have very restrictive, difficult rules and regulations to follow. And without Scott, we would not be in the 30-some-odd countries that we're currently in. And I can just say that as you start looking at the rest of this whole picture and going down through the checklist, the next item has got to be science. And if you don't have a true science board, a true set of scientists that are seeing to it that your product is manufactured correctly, it has the right ingredients, that it is really truly a product that's meaningful, that's going to make a meaningful difference in the quality of human life, you're just another Me Too company with Me Too products in a very crowded market. Privileged to have Dr. Abbas Qutab, MD, PhD. Abbas, beyond the fact that he is a wildly successful practicing physician, he's also a widely published author. He's a tremendously awarded individual, not the least of which is Physician of the Year by the U.S. Congress itself. Now, while there are many physicians, MDs, PhDs working with Kyanis of tremendous reputation and credibility, we don't have time to talk about them all, so I'm going to limit it to just one more. But I couldn't leave out Dr. Barry Tan. Now, in addition to the fact that Dr. Tan is just an off-the-chart genius, literally a true genius, the man has done something, and whether it was fate or luck, it doesn't matter, it's still the case. Dr. Tan, in his many, many international travels, happened to cross a particular plant in South America, the annatto bush. And he looked at it and he theorized by just looking at the seeds of the plant that it would have an incredibly powerful antioxidant capacity. So he took some samples back to the lab, and lo and behold, his hunch was correct. And he then patented on an international basis the tocotrienol extraction from this particular type of plant. And we'll get into that a little bit more. But what's really exciting about Dr. Tan is not only is he this person out there in science, he's working with us on a preferential basis, which gives us an incredible marketing advantage to have a product like his. Step back to the original blueberry issue. When we were talking about the wild Alaskan blueberry, most people don't think of blueberries as being wild Alaskan or commercial blueberries. They don't think about the differentiation, where they grow up, or what the difference in the plant genus might be. But the bottom line is, when you just Google search blueberries, just the common blueberry, you'll find that study after study after study will herald them as the top superfruit of all the common fruits and vegetables. And then if you go a little bit deeper and say, well, what about this wild Alaskan blueberry? What's making it so special? You'll learn that it had to grow up in a climate that is extremely harsh, a climate where that in the summertime is exposed to literally 24 hours of sunlight per day, which means 24 hours of solar radiation that could burn the fruit. And you're also having to take into account that the summer growing season is very short, and early frosts can occur, and 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 frosts could actually hit this fruit before it's completely mature. So the fruit has adapted through the eons of time to develop this very thick, very heavy skin like a rhinoceros, and it's a deep, dark, pigmented skin. Well, it doesn't take a genius to figure out, when you do any research at all, the deepest, darkest pigmented fruits and vegetables are the ones with the highest ORAC, or antioxidant capacity. When you do the actual analysis, however, of the wild Alaskan blueberries, which we have done, in fact we did it through Brunswick Laboratories, which is the gold standard, it's the same laboratories that the U.S. government uses to establish ORAC values, we learned that the wild Alaskan blueberries, batch to batch, would be between 10 and 20 times potent, gram for gram, of the common blueberry, which many studies rank as the number one. So you start thinking, wow, this wild Alaskan blueberry is all it's cracked up to be. And then you say, but no one thing is all things to all people. And the same thing in nutrients. If we're to look at Concord grapes, you'll see that there's tremendous support in the literature that talks about what they do and how that they are very, very beneficial in their antioxidant production of a particular thing called nitric oxide. And we'll hear a lot more about that a little later on. And then you look at red raspberries and you read about them and you'll say, oh my goodness, those things are just incredible. And then you go on and you say aloe vera. Well, everybody knows about aloe vera if they've got a grandmother, they've ever had a cut or a burn. And then we know about pomegranate, which is one of the hottest topics right now in the marketplace because of its cholesterol impact, cardiovascular health. And then who doesn't know about noni? Everybody's heard about noni. Well, we've included it. Cranberries, extremely hot right now. Grape seed, grape skin, the science is just there. It's in the literature. Wolfberry or goji berry, entire companies have been built just around that one berry. Bee pollen, we all know about that. Well, the point is, Kyani took the best of the best of the best of the best and put it together in one place in one product. And they took this product and turned it into a super antioxidant, super water soluble product. And then they said that's not good enough. And they added a full complement, a full recommended daily allowance of vitamins in every single 1 ounce dose. And then they added, in addition to that, trace elements, trace minerals. Now you say, okay, Dan, you made a big deal out of how fancy this product is and it's the best of the best. What can you say this stuff does? Well, then you've got to go back in time and you have to understand what you can legally say in the United States, because this is where this audio is originating from. You understand a little bit of a turf warfare that occurred between the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, and the USDA that manages foods and nutritional supplements. Well, the USDA and the FDA were arguing about who had the power to regulate what different products, and nutritional supplements got caught in that power struggle between these two government agencies. And you'll learn that Congress had to step in because it was actually quite an issue. And they wrote brand new legislation that was published in 1994, and it's titled DSHEA. Now, amongst the many things that it says in DSHEA, it says that if you are in fact a registered food or a nutritional supplement and you're not a drug or a medicine, then you can stay in that classification under those rules, unless under the new DSHEA law you make claims or statements that would then make you subject to the FDA, and then you're volunteering to be regulated by the FDA. It sounds simpler than it is. But bottom line is, I'll give you an example. Cheerios did a human clinical trial on their product. General Mills, the parent company, started advertising saying eat Cheerios would reduce your cholesterol. The FDA stepped in and said, we don't want you to say that, we're not going to let you. Mills said, well, wait a minute. We did human clinical trials. We determined that you could reduce your cholesterol 4, 5, 6 points if you use it on a regular basis. And the FDA says, we're not arguing with you that the stuff will do what you say. We're not saying you're not being truthful in advertising. We're saying you're making a medical claim. You're saying it'll reduce cholesterol. That's a medical claim. That's our purview. And you have to re-register Cheerios as a drug and then sell it with a prescription. It's like, nope, that's the rules. So you have to be careful what you say, because you could voluntarily cause yourself to become re-registered. Now, without crossing the line, here's what we can say about our products. Starting off with the Sunrise, that it includes a full RDA of vitamins in every single ounce, that it enables effective stress management, and boy is that a understatement. When you start understanding what stress does in the human body with free radical damage, hormonal changes, it is a huge topic. Then you move on to heart health. I mean, I don't even know where you go from there. It's a big deal, especially when you understand the implications of free radicals damaging the LDL component of cholesterol, and then that free radical LDL molecule damaging the lining of the arteries and causing atherosclerosis and arteriosclerosis. So heart health is a big issue when you start talking about water-soluble antioxidants. Then you go on to immune system. If the body's all tied up trying to take care of free radicals, it cannot fight off bacteria, infections, funguses, etc. as effectively because it's partially tied up. So if you can use a very powerful, very potent water-soluble antioxidant to neutralize free radicals, you can free up the immune system, and that is a huge issue. Then you go on to inflammatory response. Anyone who's had a swollen ankle, a knee, a back, a neck, any joint that's inflamed, now stop and think, can your arteries become inflamed? Can brain tissue become inflamed? In fact, can every single tissue in the human anatomy become inflamed from free radical onslaught? And the answer is absolutely yes. So when you start thinking about inflammatory response, think of it globally through every cell in the whole body. Then you talk about increased energy. If the body's all tied up trying to take care of itself because of all this free radical activity, your energy is going to be down because a lot of energy is being applied towards that fight. So then you say, okay, well, what about brain function? Well, it's a proven fact that if you can introduce very powerful water-soluble antioxidants that can cross the blood-brain barrier, you can diminish the amount of swelling, inflammation in the brain, you can increase blood flow and nutrient transfer. So it doesn't take a genius to figure out, wow, that really could truly impact brain function. So you look at these simple, silly little sentences and you see the diluting words in front of it: includes, enables, helps, supports, aids, provides, facilitates, delivers, and you say, okay, well, I understand the rules. We got to play by the shay. But now you look past that, you say, wow, this really is saying something profound here. And then in short, we just simply say, ounce for ounce, our Kyani Sunrise out-delivers. Now we go on to Kyani Sunset. Kyani Sunset is a product that is an industry benchmark setting product. No question about it. The product is basically two components. Component number one, we'll go back to where we were talking about Dr. Barry Tan having discovered the annatto-bush's seeds that are a very rich source of this form of vitamin E called tocotrienol. Go back into the literature and you start reading, and not Kyani's literature. You just do a literature search. Just go to Google and type in delta gamma fraction tocotrienol, and then you start reading what other people are saying, whether it's the National Institutes of Health or this research organization or that university, and you will find that the delta gamma fractions of vitamin E tocotrienol are between 50 and 80 times potent that of normal vitamin E. That's crazy when you stop and think about it. Imagine one of our little bottles with 90 capsules in it, or gel caps, and then our competitors, to have the same potency, you'd have to take 50 to 80 bottles of it a month? I mean, that's just not even realistic. That gives you a little bit of a correlation to just how powerful this is. Then you go and you say, all right, well, what about salmon oil? You can't hardly go past the checkout stand at the grocery store and not read on some tabloid or some magazine or some booklet about the EFAs, the omega-3 essential fatty acids. And everybody knows that the very best source comes from wild Alaskan sockeye salmon. Well, that's the most expensive source you can get them from. But that's what we're doing. We're using the most powerful, clean omega-3 essential fatty acids that you can buy on the planet Earth and combining them with the most powerful form of vitamin E that you can buy on the planet Earth, and we're putting them together in a single product. Understanding the limitations of DSHEA, and you don't want to get re-registered as a drug just because you said something that was a claim that you're not supposed to. What can you actually say? Well, here's that same limiting language: supports, helps, promotes. So we've got that in there, but now go past it. We're talking about cardiovascular health. And now by name we're talking about cholesterol, triglycerides, inflammation again. Now we're adding blood sugar levels, blood pressure levels, healthy immune response, cognitive function, healthier skin and hair. And when you start seeing people using this product and they talk to you and they say, oh my gosh, you can't believe how much better I sleep, how many few aches and pains that I have, how quicker I rebound after a workout. And people just, they will tell you, and they'll say, gosh, you must think I'm nuts, but man, I think the stuff is doing this or it's doing that. and they're not nuts. This stuff is truly amazing. To our third product. And our third product is really a family of two products, one in a normal dosage and one we call extreme. And you'll find that it is a nitric oxide precursor. And a person says, a nitric blah blah blah, what? And you say, well, really one atom of nitrogen and one atom of oxygen, and when the two come together, magic happens in the human body. And in fact, it's so important that Columbia University, their research department, dubbed it the miracle molecule, or the molecule of life. And in fact, you will learn that human existence is impossible without nitric oxide. And you might say, well, gosh, if it's so important, why haven't I heard of it? It's like, well, I don't know. But all I can tell you is that science right now is nuts about this. And in fact, in 1998, 3 researchers, so this isn't recent now, this is 1998, 3 researchers were given a Nobel Prize when they learned that nitric oxide was a signaling molecule that facilitated the proper functioning of the arterial system. As you get into the research, which we're going to get into in just a moment on the next couple of slides, you'll learn that life without nitric oxide is not possible. Life with minimal amounts of nitric oxide is miserable. You'll find that there are tremendous numbers of disastrous diseases that occur if your nitric oxide generation falls below proper optimal levels. Now, as you start researching nitric oxide, you'll almost always come up with L-arginine. And you'll find that arginine, up until recently, has been the precursor that science has been calling upon because it's really cheap. Almost 99% of it's made in China now. And you'll find that it's just abundant. It's everywhere. It's just common. It's become so common and pervasive, you can't walk into any health food store and not see 4, 5, 6 different brands of an arginine product. When I learned that Kyani had a non-arginine nitric oxide precursor that was used in a secondary pathway, a different metabolic process to make nitric oxide that didn't have the disadvantages of the amino acid protein source of arginine, I became very excited, because there are a lot of people that are very intolerant of using arginine. It can activate the herpes simplex virus, and somebody says, well, gosh, what's that? And somebody will say, well, that's the genital disease. Well, yeah, that's true. But it's also cold sores in your mouth. It could also be shingles. Well, there's also issues where that people aren't tolerant with arginine. It causes them all kinds of problems with their GI tract. In fact, it can cause some people explosive diarrhea. So it's not well tolerated by about 1/3 of the population, and there's some other issues, but we don't have time to get into. So when I heard that Kyani had this novel way through their Nitro Effects and Nitro Extreme to make nitric oxide, I became extremely excited. And a person says, well, a little bit more, Dan. What does this nitric oxide, or NO, really do in the body? Well, on this slide we talk about just a few of the things in the cardiovascular system. And the most important thing that people know about from this big Nobel Prize was issued is that it was a signaling molecule to the smooth muscle cells, and it caused increased compliance. And what compliance means, it means that when the blood wave comes out of the heart, the arteries will expand to receive that bolus of blood, and when that bolus of blood goes by, the arteries are elastic, they'll contract down, squish the blood on down the pipe. And what people don't know is that the arteries are a secondary pump, just like the heart. And if they don't comply, then you have rigid arteries, you have high blood pressure, you have arteriosclerosis, atherosclerosis, downstream lack of blood flow, or peripheral vessel disease. It's really ugly, and it all starts with inadequate amounts of nitric oxide. Every night on TV, pretty much, you can see commercials for drugs that keep platelets from inappropriately being too sticky. They don't stop them from being sticky, because if the platelets stop aggregating, if you had a cut, then you'd bleed to death. Well, what they do is they keep them from being too sticky, so you have to regulate the amount of drug you take to regulate the amount of this clotting that's going to be an action of the platelets. Well, that's a natural function of nitric oxide. And if a person had proper amounts of serum nitric oxide, they wouldn't have need of those drugs, because that is what that regulation is regulated by, is NO. Now we move from the plumbing system to the electrical system. Just as in the plumbing system, if the electrical system doesn't have adequate amounts of NO, or nitric oxide, the electrical system fails. And if it is low enough, it completely fails and you die. And when you say, well, what are some of the indications of low nitric oxide? It can range from senile dementia, Alzheimer's, to strokes that occur that cause dysfunction in the brain, to improper amounts of blood flow in the brain to where that the tissue is underserviced. And when it's underserviced, it becomes inactive. And if it's inactive, then proper communication doesn't occur. But it's even bigger than that, because it goes all the way down to the axons of neurons. And if in fact these things aren't continuously regenerated, they will fail, and your electrical system fails, and you have horrible, horrible conditions. Now moving on to the immune system. The immune system, people take for granted that cancer is cancer. Well, what most people are shocked to find out is that 100% of us have cancer 100% of the time. Now, we may not label it that, but we all have cells that become damaged, and the DNA and the RNA in the cell becomes damaged, and those are the blueprints. Those are the sets of instructions that say, okay, when you replicate or duplicate the cell, when it splits in half and becomes two, that new cell is going to look like this or look like that. Well, if the DNA is damaged, it cannot replicate identically to the original cell prior to it being damaged. That aberrant cell, if it continues to grow and then form a tumor, we label cancer. Well, the body has a natural defense against that, because just the normal process of breathing air, we create oxygen-free radicals, and oxygen-free radicals will damage these cells and damage the DNA. Well, the body deals with it. They go in with a specialized form of a white blood cell called a macrophage. And macrophages go in and they literally envelop, consume, digest, and then emit the particles of that aberrant cell. In other words, they digest it and get rid of it. And they prevent cancer. Well, if your immune system doesn't have adequate amounts of NO, then the macrophages don't function properly, and they cannot kill aberrant cells. They can't kill off invading bacteria, invading viral infections. And in fact, you will die because your immune system doesn't function adequately. Very quickly, one of these things will cause you to cease to function. So now we've talked about NO being essential in cardiovascular performance, essential in the electrical system, and essential in our immune system. So a person might come to the realization that, gosh, this NO might be kind of important. And I'll say, yeah, it's really no big deal. It's kind of like oxygen. You can't live without it. Everybody says, well, oxygen's in the air, it's free. And nitrogen's in the air, and it's free. Doesn't the body just inhale and make it? And the answer is no, it really doesn't. And that's what's so special about our nitro effects and nitro extremes, that it literally is in the chemical chain very close to nitric oxide. When you look at the nitrates and nitrites, a nitrate is NO3. A nitrite is NO2. Nitric oxide is NO. In other words, you start looking at these compounds and they just come from natural plants. Spinach, kale, from beets, but most importantly from noni. That's where we get ours. So you start looking at this and saying, holy cow, Dan, your products are amazing. How far is your distribution, Dan? Are you guys selling stuff just here locally? Are you selling it across the state line, across the country, or are you across the ponds and selling in Europe and Asia? And the truth of the matter is, even though we're a very young company, we're already in very, very powerful economic centers and commercial centers around the world, including Tokyo, Hong Kong, Beijing, Taipei, and Taiwan. Are you talking about people just south of our border in Mexico? You'll find that these products are incredibly in high demand for all the reasons you can imagine. And then if you jump across to Europe, Europe is just insanely excited about these products. They're looking for options. And what I can also tell you is when you start talking about the business element of this, whether you have a person who's buying product and they're in China or Australia or Toronto, Canada, or London, England, it really doesn't matter, because we convert all of those sales back to a common type of a calculable formula using points. And you're going to get paid based on a certain number of points. The compensation portion of this, you will be blown away. All of this is run out of our headquarters that are in Idaho Falls, Idaho. And I say, well, aren't you guys a network marketing company? And hasn't network marketing company as an industry had some companies that were not quite so cool? And the answer is yeah, absolutely. And if you were to look at people in the gas and oil industry, or people in any type of business, whether it's insurance or Wall Street, everyone has companies that are not quite up to par. And our industry has too. But what I would like to have you do is look at this, that our industry has grown up. It is now a $100 billion annual producing industry. And in fact, it's predicted to be the next $1 trillion industry. And it is gaining social acceptance and business acceptance in the seats of power, both from business and politics. And whether you're talking about Donald Trump or Robert Kiyosaki or Warren Buffett, you will find that we are absolutely a huge industry that's being recognized by the moguls of business. You'll also see that whether you're a Republican or a Democrat or an independent, it doesn't matter. Politically, we are an absolute force to be reckoned with, because there are now hundreds of millions of people around the world engaged in our industry. And what's neat about this industry for the United States is we are a net exporter of product, helping to balance the trade imbalance as opposed to being a net importer. The other thing that's really exciting is the little guy with a few $100 in his pocket can actually start a business. You don't have to have tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars for a franchise or a traditional business. You can literally build a global business for a few $100. And I can tell you this, people are flocking to our industry. And when I say people are flocking, you look at the industry and say, well, what's driving this huge insurgence of people into our industry? And it's the global recession. It's 50 years. We've not seen rates of unemployment, or those that were employed who are lucky enough to find a job, maybe at a lower station, at a lower pay, and that are now underemployed, or those that are stagnant. They're stuck in a corporate job. They hate it. They want out, but they look around and say, gosh, I better stay put. And they're looking for an exit strategy and don't have one. I tell you that Kyani is that solution. They are that answer. And we are recruiting people at an exorbitant, just incredible rate. Now, people will say, okay, Dan, so what? You get people to come join. Can they make money? Can they make money fast enough to stay put? Because people are pretty impatient today. And some people need a quick answer. They need to be able to do something and get paid quickly. The answer is yes. Now, when you look at this sheet and you say, oh my gosh, Swindell, this thing's giving me a headache. I'm going cross-eyed looking at this. And before I pass out, can you explain this thing to me? And I'll say, well, it's a little too much to try to explain in one little bite, and I actually do a full presentation to explain the full compensation plan in another webinar. But to give you some highlights and to help you understand it, it's important to understand these basic principles. A compensation package, whether it's with IBM or with us, is really a set of incentives to reward you for doing certain activities. Activities that will be healthy for the company and profitable. Activities that will be healthy for you and your organization and profitable. So you say, well, in basic categories, what do you want to incentivize? Well, we want to incentivize the marketing of our product. So we have our traditional wholesale to retail markup like everybody else. Then we've got the next two are extremely unique. And what they'll do is they'll say, if you will grow a customer base, we'll give you special bonuses for that. One, we'll give you a one-time accelerated bonus, and two, we'll give you a percentage bonus of all other people that are growing global customers in addition to your commissions. Then we go on and say, well, what else would you like to reward and incentivize? And that would be the recruiting of other people to help us grow our company. So we pay a very high percentage out, and it's on a weekly basis to get people to help us bring new people in to help us expand the company. And we do that through the starter packs that people can buy, so they don't have to figure out what to do. We've got it all set up, and all they do is buy a variety of packages. Next one is we want to reward people for getting off to a fast start, taking quick action, doing something to take control of their financial destiny. And we will pay them a nice bonus for getting off to a quick start, and that money is paid very quickly. Then you go on and you say, all right, well, what about people that are kind of moving into the middle ranks? Are you still continuing to incentivize them with bonuses? And the answer is absolutely, and they're very significant bonuses. And the next question would be, well, what's at the heart of your compensation plan? I've heard of different types of plans. I've heard of this and of that. And what is yours like? I'll say, well, there hasn't really truly been a new compensation engine or a true design change in about 6 years. There hasn't really truly been a new invention. And Kyani really truly has created something brand new. And if you're an industry professional and you say, well, what is this pay gate accumulator? What the heck is that? I've never even heard anything like that. Nor had I, nor had anyone else. It is a Kyani first. And what I can tell you is that this feature by itself, not all the other ones, but just this one by itself, in addition to the other ones, pays out 44%. It's the heart of the comp plan, and it helps a person to really, really be rewarded for their efforts. Now, if that's not enough, we want people to understand that if you bring other people to the table that are productive, that help grow the company, we're going to let you share in their profitability to the company. And in fact, we're going to let you earn a percentage, a healthy percentage, of their check in addition to your check, in addition to your override on them. In fact, we're calling it a matching check. So when you start looking at that and say, holy cow, this thing is really, really rich, we're not done yet. Then as you start hitting upper ranks, and these really truly are upper ranks, we're going to give you bonuses that range from between $5,000 as a single check up to $500,000 in cash as a single check. So if you're a top performer and you're looking for a home, I will guarantee you Kyani will reward you sufficiently to bring in your people, have them make enough money. But if you're a superstar, you're going to absolutely see that our comp plan is going to reward you as well. You go on and say, okay, well, Dan, what about a car program or trip rewards? And the answer is absolutely, spades. People get pretty excited about vehicles, and our vehicle allowance is stronger than anybody in the industry, bar none. It's 3-tiered, so if you're a crossover person hitting one of the first initial ranks, it's still extremely generous at $1,200 a month, plus a $4,000 cash bonus that you can use as a down payment for the vehicle, a lease buy down, or to pay for taxes or whatever else you need for the acquisition of the vehicle. But then Kyani does something that no other company does in the industry that I'm aware of, and that is that immediately after your 3-month qualification, and by the way, most companies are a 6-month to 12-month qualification, we're after just 3. Once you get your vehicle, if your volume of sales decreases and you no longer qualify because you dropped out of eligibility, Kyani insures you, and they will guarantee to pay 12 months in a row. Even if the very first month you qualified, you fell out of qualification, you're protected. So if you had a hiccup in volume for whatever reason, you are protected. You're not stuck with the vehicle and the payment and no means to pay it. You move on and say, well, what about trips? You were bragging about how great your trips are. Well, Kyani does trips at a level I've never seen before, and I've been in the industry full-time since 1994, and I've had the privilege to move hundreds of millions of dollars of product. So I actually know what companies are doing out there. There's one 7-diamond hotel in the world. Only one. And Kyani has already taken its top performers to that exotic location to be rewarded and pampered unlike ever. And if you stop and think about working hard and then hanging out with other people that are getting the job done and being able to learn from them, you will find that people strive very, very hard. Once you win one of these trips, you never ever want to qualify for the next one. Now you just say, okay, Dan, you've got these different pieces of the puzzle. What about marketing tools? Because I've seen companies that had great products, great comp plans, great management, but they just fell on their face because they didn't have tools. You'll find we have got tools and systems that will empower you to the point that if somebody says to me, gosh, this just isn't working, and I'll say, no, it is working. You're not working. You're not doing the deal. And I can literally say that because an average person, you have them just simply do the basics, and you have them do the basics over and over again, their success is all but ensured. Now, final. You come down to the end and you say, okay, Dan, what about this checklist you were talking about? Well, I'm an instrument-rated pilot. I guarantee you, before I take off out into the murk, I want to make sure that everything's right. The instruments are working, fuel is right, there's no water in the fuel, the prop is right, the radios are working. I want to make sure that I'm going to be able to complete that flight. I don't want to die. Well, when you look at joining a new company, I don't think you should take it any less lightly. I really don't. It's a very serious thing. After all, it's just your financial future, right? So if you're going to be serious about it, build your own checklist and make sure that each of these can be ticked off. Company, ownership, management, science, products, timing. Have you got the right products with the right company in front of the right demographic? Compensation plan. Can you really compete with the other companies out there? And of course, the all-important training and support. I can say that Kyani flat out checks all the boxes. Now, in final, you might say, okay, Dan, if I wanted to get started, what are my choices? Well, we make it easy. If you said to me, Dan, it's embarrassing, I even hate to admit it, I'm so broke, I don't even know how I'm going to pay my next car payment. You need an answer. You need an answer now. You need to be able to make money this week and get paid next week. We have a solution. You can get started for as little as $40, and it's harder when you get started at the bottom, but if that's all you've got to work with, we will take and work with what you've got. We're not looking for investors. We're looking for people that want to go build a business. If you can afford to step up and go into one of the higher packages, or optimally come into the $4.99 pack, they're going to give you $150 worth of free stuff. Just free goodies that's just chrome on the car. It's core stuff. It's important stuff to help you really truly grow your business. So regardless of whether you start at the very bottom and have to, with a little extra effort, work your way up, or you get a chance to start out at the higher amount because you can afford to, the important thing is to get started. Build a game plan with the person that invited you to join. Join with their upline diamond team, and you'll learn what that means. There are 12 people that have an interest in your success, and you'll find that there are people that will actually lock arms with you, help you become successful. So it's not just up to you. I thank you so much for your time and attention, and I hope you think that this was worth your investment of time. Have a wonderful day.